I call this regular meeting of the Village of Villa Park Planning and Zoning Commission to order. Start with roll call. Calvert,
Here.
Hofstra,
Here.
Jackson, Lemieux,
Here.
Ludke,
Here.
Orlowski,
Here.
Romano,
Yep.
Linsky.
Here.
I too am present. With that, we have a quorum. So first item will be approval of minutes. That would be the minutes for November 9th, 2023. Do we have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Or a second?
Second. Oh. Second.
Seconded by Ludke. Any questions or comments on the motion or any amendments to the minutes? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the minutes are approved. And we have no public hearings this evening, but we do have one discussion item, and that will be comprehensive plan, existing conditions memo review. Whenever you're ready.
Hello, good afternoon. So, I always talk really softly. So today we have the existing conditions from our planning consultants, Halcyon Levine. This is a draft, so we are really reviewing, looking for comments from you, and then we can, wrap up the existing conditions. And then what we are reviewing are demographics, community outreach, past plans, studies, and reports. We're looking at land use and zoning, as well as transportation and mobility, and our community facilities and infrastructure. So as we know, Villa Park is located at a pretty good place. We were very close to O'Hare. We have expressways nearby. The planning area that we're focusing on is the planning area boundary, which is shown on the map here. For our demographics, we've got some pretty interesting data points. In 1970, Villa Park's population peaked, and since then it's decreased and stayed pretty stagnant in the last decade. As far as age goes, we have the largest share of population is between, I believe, 35 and 54, with a lack in young adults. And for our racial and ethnic composition, racial majority is white with Hispanic following. We have a higher Hispanic population compared to DuPage County and Illinois. For households, the highest percent of household type is single-family detached, and that is far above the number for DuPage County and the state as well. And then we're seeing an increase, in median household return, a decrease in median household values. Let's see, 2010 it was 269,300, and in 2021 is 263,100. What is increasing is income. The median income in 2021 was 85,173. This is just a breakdown in where our residents work and where workers work. We've seen an increase in employment in professional, scientific, and technical services. But the healthcare almost always is the most robust line of work. And then interestingly enough, let's see, most employees who work in Villa Park live outside of the community, but Villa Park can be characterized as a small employment center because we experience an increased daytime population as more people commute into the village to work than commute out. And for education, compared to DuPage County and Illinois, we have lower rates of advanced degrees. Part of the planning process is community outreach. Earlier, or I guess mid-2023, we had the Village Department Heads Workshop where department heads identified issues, concerns, and strengths in Villa Park. We also had the joint committee workshop, which I think all of you were at. So again, we broke down things by issues, concerns, specific action that you wanted to see, as well as the strengths of Villa Park. And then our planning consultants set up an interactive website where residents and business owners can go and look at updates for the comprehensive plan, as well as fill out the community survey. To date, when this was created, we had 655 responses for the survey, and we also had 88 data points for Map Social, where people were able to map issues and opportunities in Villa Park. And then this is an interesting data point from Map Social. This is where participants live. So we can see that it's pretty evenly distributed around the village. There's no section where it's particularly concentrated. And then we have 3 different outreach groups that we will be having at the end of the month. It's going to be February 28th. We'll be seeing the key stakeholder interviews and focus groups, business community workshops, and the community visioning workshop. So some key considerations, that we are looking at is that we've identified issues or a need for expanding entertainment options in Villa Park, moving away from North Avenue and thinking locally, and then also a need for clear direction of where the village is going, improving our flow and connectivity, and preparing for growth. And then again, reiterating a need for diverse housing options. And then we have our past plans, studies, and reports. Our last comprehensive plan was approved in 2009. We will be using it as a guide to shape our recommendations and observations for this new one. But considering all the changes that we've seen since this 2009 comp plan, especially with COVID, we're definitely wanting to look at new recommendations. We also have the Villa Park bicycle and pedestrian plan, which we'll be using to guide for our strategies for bike and pedestrian transportation. And then in 2020, we adopted the Complete Streets policy. We'll also be using it as guidance in relation to our potential street improvements in the road network. The most recent one that was approved was a capital improvement plan. This one will outline the financing, location, and timing for our capital improvement projects over several years. And then some information on our existing land use. We have single dwelling, detached and attached, multi-dwelling, mixed use, regional commercial. This is on like North Avenue, and then commercial, which is Roosevelt Road in St. Charles. Office, light industrial, heavy industrial, public and semi-public, parks and open space, utilities, and vacant land. This is a map for the existing land use. You can see that it looks very similar to the zoning map. And you can also see that the majority of the village is for single-family detached, which kind of reflects where the need for more diverse options comes in. And for our land use considerations, like I just said, need for housing diversity, reposition commercial options to be more local, and redevelop vacant parcels or deteriorating buildings. Now we'll be looking at zoning. These are our current zoning districts from residential, commercial, industrial, and mixed use. And our zoning map, which now reflects the recent changes that we did for the PUD rezoning, and PUD is no longer listed as a zoning district. And our key considerations for zoning would be, again, provide diverse residential formats, encourage shopping and dining options, and building up the RC2 district, and enforcing active transportation standards, like using our 3 trails. Now we're looking at transportation and mobility. Our roadways are broken down by types of roads, so we're seeing freeways, major arterials, minor arterials, collectors, and local roads. And in this table, you can see the most common of each classification in Villa Park. And now mapped out, you can see arterial, your Roosevelt, Route 83 and North Avenue. Our arterial is St. Charles, Addison, and Villa. And collector, or the major collector, would be Ardmore. Can go next. So we're looking at our network capacity. Think so. Here we see that the most congestion actually happens outside of the village at Route 83 and North and Route 83 and St. Charles. But even though it happens outside of the village, it still impacts us since a lot of people go down Villa Avenue instead to avoid traffic. For next, we've got sustainable vehicles. We have 27 EV chargers in the village. For public transit, we have the Metra, a PACE. We have 2 bus routes for PACE, which are the 301 and 313. And then, let's see. And here we can see everything mapped out with our train stations, railroad crossings, truck routes, and the bus stops. As we know, O'Hare is only 20 miles away. And then we have our bicycle paths, which is, we have the Prairie Path, the Great Western Trail, and Salt Creek Greenway Trail. There's some gaps in the roadway system for pedestrians that have been identified. And then we have our pedestrian crossings that you can see the locations on the actual path. Next, we have the bicycle facility plans. We talked about the bicycle and pedestrian plan and the complete streets. Travel patterns and behavior were also analyzed. And then planned and programmed transportation projects, we have the CMAP onto 2050 Comprehensive Regional Plan that would include the Metra improvements and PACE Pulse expansion. We also have an IDOT multi-year program for Roosevelt Road that would extend from the 294 to Finley Road. And then the DuPage County Department of Transportation also has an improvement plan for their corridors. So our key considerations for transportation, we're talking about traffic circulation, sustainable vehicles, and public transit and mobility for bicycle and pedestrians. A part of the existing conditions, we also analyzed community facilities and infrastructure. Our consultants broke down our type of governance, which we already know, village board, and then the duties of the commissions and departments in Villa Park. And then here we can see our community facilities actually mapped out. You'll see both fire stations, one on the north, one on the south, our police departments, our schools kind of spread around that are in different districts, and then also some public and semi-public buildings. Again, our public works department is broken down by 6 divisions: forestry, streets, wastewater, water, and engineering and fleet. Their key considerations for community facilities is there's been residents have identified a need for a clear image for the village, as well as age and language specific services for young adults and seniors, as well as Spanish speakers. Here we have our parks. We have a total of 118.8 acres of parks. This includes the Sugar Creek Golf Course, which is 45 acres. There are 2 that are currently under construction. We have the Lions Recreation Building as well as Lufkin Park. And our existing trails, again, the Prairie Path, Great Western Trail, and the Salt Creek Trail. Our key considerations for our parks and open space is to adopt conservation design standards. Let's see, village trees were one of the things that residents identified as that needed attention, both in the lack of trees and the condition of the trees. And then many residents also identified a need for additional sports fields. And then this map has our parks and open spaces as well as parks that are within a 5-minute walk or a quarter-mile service area. So that would be the orange section that shows you that it is accessible. Yellow would be within a 10-minute walk or half a mile. And then like the dark brown or taupe color is an underserved area that is lacking parks. So you can see it's kind of concentrated southeast, a little bit northeast. And then here are environmental features. We have the creek, and our parks and open spaces also mapped out here. And that is the end of the existing conditions.
All right.
So at this time, I'd like to open up for questions, comments, any bits of information that you think might be valuable to add into the existing conditions memo. But just as a reminder, this was a factual document, right? It's demographics, it's the responses to the surveys that we got. This isn't part of the planning document. We're not recommending option, this is existing conditions memo. This is probably going to end up being an entire chapter in the future comprehensive plan, but we needed to know where we were before we could figure out how to move forward.
Would anybody have any comments, anything they want to raise? I'm
I didn't
creating
get to
a,
read through it all the way yet.
I'm creating a list of typos. I'll send those to you,
Yeah, so we've already,
but I don't need to burden you with those tonight.
we've already been in communication with the consultant regarding some typos, some errors, that kind of stuff. So we're well aware of that. We're looking for the other things. But yes.
I should say it's actually a relatively small list compared to the number of words in here, but
Excellent. But yes, going to the length of it, I thought a 43-page memo might have been an incorrect term.
yeah.
Mark, was there any plan of soliciting, like, they talked about zip cars and community-type cars. Unfortunately, the developments I've been involved with, they've shut them down out of lack of interest. But have they solicited, there's a few different services, and so you have to get people,
Sure.
The companies in, so they would have to solicit them.
Yeah, I'm unaware of any solicitation on the village's behalf for any type of those services.
I was also concerned, I don't know exactly what they're talking about. They talk about enforcing active transportation standards. And you did mention that the problems, I live one house away from Villa, and every night, the people are racing down Villa as 83 gets crowded. They race down Villa, they race down Summit, surprisingly, because that only goes, it doesn't go all the way through, and then also Ardmore. And, when I first moved to Villa Park, I actually lived on Villa. And we were upset when they paved Villa because it allowed the people to go even faster. We liked the potholes because it slowed them down. They were like speed bumps.
Sure.
But, so I, making it so that people can go faster is,
Do you mean the active transportation? Is that the one you're referring to?
well, they talked about upgrading the Villa, Villa Avenue, and I'm not sure what the upgrades would consist of. I wouldn't mind seeing speed bumps.
Yeah, so active transportation does not mean how do I get faster, right? It's how do we look at the entire right-of-way to offer it for vehicles, pedestrians, bicycles, strollers, buggies, and scooters, right? It's everything. So, and there's also a movement toward lowering speed limits by curve trees, bump outs, all those other things.
Yes.
So
okay.
that's what they're actually talking about, which I
Oh,
think you would be in favor of.
Okay, that would be great. There's also, I was involved with the 78 downtown as well, and they had demarcations and their optical illusions where you actually think that there's an obstacle, in the road because of the pavement markings.
Nice. Cool.
One thing I don't know if it's worth including or not, because I believe it was kind of rolled into the comprehensive plan, but I'm going to say 2006, 2007, we did the station area plan and study.
Oh, okay.
That ultimately led to the initial,
Okay.
whatever you want to call it, form-based zoning, or zoning overlay district for that.
Okay.
So I don't know if that's worth looking at or including in here, but I don't remember the exact year on that.
Got it. Yeah, we'll pull that.
But there was quite a study of that area along Villa, along Ardmore, north of the tracks.
Yeah.
So that also had some, it'd be a bit dated now, but it had a lot of demographic, and there was even a economic study.
Yeah,
for
and
lack of better terms
we
out
can
of it.
pull it and see if enough of that has been implemented with the new code, with the
Yeah.
TIF district, with those things that if there's still a couple of outliers that would be worth folding in, or if that plan is checkboxed.
Yeah.
So, but cool, thank you.
There was one other thing, they talked about the lack of parks. I'm not sure what is allowed on the Prairie Path, but the Prairie Path might have some opportunities for development. I know no one wants a pickleball court next to their house, but there's almost, it almost seems like there might be room, but it may not be allowed,
Yeah, a significant portion of the Prairie Path right-of-way is the county.
yes.
Some of it is the villages, but I can never remember which portions. It's a very small portion.
So,
Yeah, and if you note in the existing parks chart there, Great Western Trail and Prairie Path are already considered in the total acreage.
yes.
So it's not necessarily we need more stuff in the parks. It's that the acreage of available parks to our population is low per standards.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think, I know that as a community, most of us know we don't have a lot of open green space. The Prairie Path, which, like you said, is not generally ours, but that's probably most well-known and the most utilized. But when you look at that, one of the things that did jump out at me most is that the map on page 40, basically proximity to parks.
Yeah,
I think it's not really a surprise that the far northeast doesn't really. It's hard to think of Sugar Creek as a park, because if you're not playing golf, you don't. I mean, maybe you walk your dog around the perimeter,
Right.
but
right, which is why it's noted as the golf
Right.
course on this map, because it's not
Yeah.
that type of park that they'd be calculating. You know, you're not going to a tot lot, you're not going to a ball field. It's a pay-to-play kind of scenario.
But yeah,
But
kinda-
it is open space, it is
Yeah.
natural, right? So it's one of those anomalies.
it's a natural resource, but it
Yes,
doesn't
right.
really function as a park, like
Agreed.
I said, unless you play golf.
Agreed.
So that map really does do a good job of illustrating both where we're lacking and how much we're lacking.
Yes. Just for reference, the standard, if we applied that to our current population, would be 225 acres.
So even including the trails, we have about half
And-
of what we should
And
have.
45 acres of golf course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there's really,
That's,
facts
facts are facts.
That's
Just-
a
I'm not
fact,
saying
yeah.
anything beyond
That's a
that.
fact that
And that
that's
doesn't
just gonna
surprise-
sit there and stare us in the face.
That
Yes.
fact doesn't
Right.
surprise anybody up
Perpetuity.
here, I don't
Yeah,
think.
yeah.
Anybody in this room.
Yep.
But anybody who's ever tried to organize even a Little League baseball practice on a Tuesday night in the spring knows there's not a lot of opportunity even just in the grass.
So one thing that stood out to me, to somewhat piggyback off of the lack of green space conversation, which is not a novel concept to this commission by any means, is the general response from those that we heard from indicated that the village lacks an identity. And I don't think anybody up here would disagree with that statement. However, we are the Garden Village. So we either need to lean into that and possibly come up with a plan and a strategy to further encompass and promote ourselves as the Garden Village, as we're so named, or we need to start pivoting from that and rebrand under a different identity.
Any ideas?
Well, I certainly don't want to be the lack of green space village.
It just doesn't have the same kind of tone and ring. Doesn't roll off the tongue.
My boss used to say, I'm pro urban elevated expressways. Nobody's ever said that, right? But
No, but not to just throw a problem out without a solution. We've been talking about the assets that we have. We have an amazing trail system through the Prairie Path and the Great Western, albeit most of that is actually controlled by DuPage County. However, leaning into the Garden Village, that presents a great opportunity to actually repurpose that as a beautification aspect to truly promote that designation if we want to lean into that.
Right.
I mean, we can only encourage homeowners and businesses to do so much, but if there are aspects that we can control as a village and we reinvest in ourselves, there is opportunity there.
I'm now thinking of like English hedge along the entire English garden.
Yeah, Mark, they do have some wildlife areas that they've started over by Ovaltine and then I think just west of Summit. And, there's opportunity for more of that. So, the gardens have been started, and then over on Villa, they do have the little pavilion type area. And then the flower garden is pretty nice, right next to the Villa Avenue station.
Curious about the village trees. I mean, it's kind of vague in terms of, is that
Well-
going to lead towards a plan of replanting trees and parkways? Is that, I mean,
It could, yeah, it could. So these are the things that we have now heard through community outreach. And so then, through the planning process and a little bit more data collection, probably from Public Works and the forestry is, what are we doing? I know that we plant approximately 80 trees a year. Is that new? Is that replacement? So we got to figure out through the rest of the plan of how can we actually create more,
Yeah, because when I think about the village and trees, I don't think of us, and I could be wrong because I don't have a tree inventory. I just, anecdotally, I don't think of us as being a village lacking in trees.
No.
Generally where we're lacking in trees is a lack of open space and a village that didn't have a landscape ordinance until about 15 years ago. So areas that in newer communities, or communities that evolved their zoning ordinance earlier, shopping centers, the prime example is Jewel, right? Right across the street. There's not a tree in that parking lot. And so that corner feels dead,
Barren.
barren. But when you go down our neighborhood streets, even Villa and Ardmore and for the most part Addison, you don't drive down those streets and think, boy, I wish there were more trees. Sometimes you think, boy, I wish there wasn't a tree right in front of that stop sign. Right? I mean, it's not like we don't have trees. It's where are our trees and where can we work to fix some of those things that feel like holes because they are holes, but they're holes in a village that generally has, I think, well-planted trees.
Yeah, the comment could be, we need strategic locations for new tree coverage.
Yeah.
If you look, St. Charles, no trees, right? The residential, plentiful, large, borderline heritage-sized trees, right? So how do we get a even playing field?
Right.
So when forestry says they plant about 80 trees a year, how many do they take down?
That I don't know.
Okay?
Yeah.
I mean, just from my
Yeah.
observation, I'd say 80, I'm not sure keeps you even.
Yeah, so that's like some of the data that we'll pull internally now that, this is coming up here and say,
You can
are we?
see the age of our trees. You start to see a lot of diseased trees,
It's true.
okay, trees that are at the end of their life.
Yeah.
I think that's part of the problem, is we actually have a lot of trees that are at the end of their life, or they're already dead. I can actually say this week I've seen Public Works, I want to say they've cut down 6 trees, just this week.
Yeah. And like most communities, we were playing catch up after Emerald Ash Borer and
Dutch elm.
Dutch Elm and the other things that came through. And,
I think we're still playing catch-up.
And
well, I'm
to,
sure we are in some places.
and to add on with the tree ordinance, we are now also planting healthier trees that are less susceptible to disease.
Yeah.
So it's like, yes, the Dutch elm or whatever the next thing that's going to happen, we won't get hit so hard because we now have a more diversified tree stock.
Yeah.
So those are other strides that have taken, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is a very little thing, but on page 6, the employment chart, where workers work, I would have to guess that where people work in the village, education has to be a significant component. of our employees in the village, and it's not on the list anywhere? Between D45 and D88?
Residents work where workers work. Okay.
Where workers work is
Yep.
where, are the village, people that are employed in the village, correct? Not, that's people coming to village to work, or, I'm reading that right?
I don't know how we're supposed to read it.
Yeah, where residents work is where people who live here work, and where workers work is where,
Village jobs.
well, I don't know, it's also
You know what,
possible.
we're just gonna recommend they change the title of that so it's clear.
Yeah,
But good point, though, on the education not showing.
I mean, I would think
Yeah.
education would
Good
have
point.
to be one of our key employment
Well,
bases.
it shows that 959 people work in educational services.
But
But that's
that's
the
of our,
residents.
That's
if
the
we're reading it
residents.
one way, that's where our residents, but
But they must not work at ours.
Right.
we don't have any.
I would guess
according-
about 70% of those
I
do.
would think,
Good point.
Yeah.
That seems like a low number to me.
900?
7%? Yeah, probably.
Well, whatever, the 8%, the 959 of our 22,000, how many people work in education? I don't know. But I could be wrong. That's neither here nor there. That's the number.
Surveyed.
Yep, we'll get that adjusted.
Yeah.
Where would automotive fall
No.
as far as where workers work? Wouldn't we want, I mean, look at all the,
Probably under transportation. Because if they're using the NAICS, automotive repair and maintenance, all that stuff falls under transportation heading.
Hey, Mark. Why would we have mining, quarrying, and oil and gas extraction as a item? I'm just curious.
Because it's always been zero. Yeah.
I mean,
it could be
That's a good-
something new.
that's-
I mean,
good
we're
point.
drilling down into sort of the nick. I'm
We
trying
are,
to understand
so-
these things from a, the holistic.
You're coming at me right now, so here we go.
Yeah.
We are right next to Elmhurst Stone.
Fine.
So, in proximity to a potential employer, it would make sense. I get that it's at zero, so why
But-
do we have it? But if we're looking at year over year over year, it does make sense to keep it on there.
But where
But Mike-
workers work is people employed in the village, not
We think,
where
right,
people.
right.
where- not-
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
But that's the only one. But yeah, I mean, if it's truly zero, we're probably gonna just pull it off.
Unless
Oh,
we
we could
absorb
always-
that half of the,
We could incorporate that half.
the other side of 83,
And then
we
we
could
could-
grab that
Oh,
space.
they're on this side of 83.
Yeah,
What's that again?
They're adjacent. They're on our side.
I'm just
of
saying, if
83.
on this side of, exactly.
Yeah, this-
I'm in favor of all that.
Yeah, me too.
So let's keep it in.
Okay.
Yeah, keep it on there. We're gonna need it.
It's a net change of 0%, so.
This is like,
It would be a positive for us.
Yeah, so that's why, because it's not the oil rigs, it's the quarry.
I understand I'm just, it was more just the fact that there was a net change of,
Nothing.
over a, 15-year period here of nothing going on, so.
Well, yeah, so my assumption would be looking at a table that shows like top employment, whether it's employment of the residents or employees working in in the village, would be that we're looking at the top 10 or whatever.
Right.
There's no way zero is in the top 10. I mean, I hope not.
Right.
No.
Yeah, we'll get clarification. in
Because the
general.
top list is by share. Bottom list is randomized.
Having worked on enough of these, somebody probably just deleted the wrong line from the table.
Also,
Or just add and delete.
That table is probably supposed to be
Yeah,
education.
exactly, yeah.
draft.
It's a draft, yeah.
At some point, your eyes start to glaze over. As Mark's eyes glaze over.
Jumping back to the, the outreach sort of components, and I saw the visioning workshop that sort of, that Stephanie had alluded to. So what's happening with those that's still in the existing conditions sort of phase of the larger project here?
Correct. So just to touch on that a little bit, the little commercial for February 28th. That's going to be a big day in Villa Park for the comp plan. In the morning, we have the business workshop, which is from 8 to 9:30 at the Sugar Creek Golf Course. This is for all local business owners, managers of corporate businesses, anyone that works here, anyone that works from home but still wants to have some sort of business relationship with the village. We're looking for all the people across the entire spectrum of business, right? So that's in the morning at Sugar Creek. During the day, we have some of the stakeholder interviews. We've pinpointed a couple of individuals around the community that we're going to be doing individual interviews with to dive into their specific niche thing that they're into. And then the evening is the community visioning workshop. And this is the big, everybody who has anything to say about Villa Park as a resident or a worker or a student or anything at all, this is the big one. Charrettes, breakout groups, this is the big, fun, planning one. And that is from 6:30 to 8-ish. We put an end time, but you never know because you know how it goes. And that's at Allegra.
Oh, that's
So tell everybody, tell your neighbors, there's going to be snacks and food and drinks, not full sit down or anything, but just enough to keep everybody going. So that's the big one. The previous comp plan, this was what was held over at,
Iowa.
no,
Odium?
thank you. Yes, at Odium. I've heard stories about it, but it's that similar one. We invited everybody and it's a big show. So that's my commercial for February 28th. So yes, once that is all completed, that is still technically existing conditions, that'll then be folded into the report as well. Not much of that is demographic info, it's back to the,
Yeah, I understood, yeah. But that's still on this front end, that's, so,
yes,
yeah.
yep.
So how difficult is it when they start to see this kind of draft from your end of things to start having these conversations that we're sort of touching upon about potholes versus, speed bumps versus planting things? I mean, it seems like it's a natural, to start wanting to do something. I mean, are we cautioned? Does House of Lean sort of caution, sort of just like, we're still in this phase? How do we start to, or do we
No,
start just
we are-
documenting as much as we can as we?
Yeah, so their behind-the-scenes staff has already started some very, very preliminary planning docs.
Okay.
That, we haven't even seen yet, right? As we transition out of existing condition data collection
Yeah.
and morph into the more planning, actual creating of the document. So that, we're in that right now. We're starting that transition.
We're
As we get out of
transitioning.
February, finish those things.
Yeah.
Take that data that's been collected on the 28th, and then slowly morph into the full-on planning mode.
Yeah.
I have a question, Mark. In Section 2, demographic snapshot, was there any information that was captured about the population and the demographics and, for example, the turnover or their length of residency and things like that in any of this information? So, for example, we have like a relatively young population,
Right.
Of residents in 20 to 34 age bracket. How long have they been here? What's our retention of those particular groups over time?
Yeah.
Things like that. And even with the senior population, how long have they been here? Do they stay here after a certain age, or they move to a different community and things like that?
So I'll answer the last one first. That is your percentage on the age cohorts from decade to decade to decade. That tells you if people are staying or if they're moving. So if that same cohort keeps on the same, you know what I'm saying? So 25 to 35 is 40%, 35 to 45 is 40%, and 50, that's showing that they're staying. Okay. I am not aware of data that is collected on how long an individual lived there if they've already moved. And then I will find out if we've ever asked, and this would be Census or American Community Survey, how long have you lived here? You can't collect the data if they've already left, right?
Right.
But I'll check into that, because that's an interesting, bit of info. Yeah, because then you can compare age versus overall, how long has residents lived here, right? 50% have been here for 50 years, right? And
Right.
but then your age, so those are all the children, you can run some analytics on that. So yeah, I don't know, I'll have to check.
Yeah, that's generally, in my experience, that's like kind of hard data to come by. Really, you look at the cohorts and
Yeah, you have to,
kind of make a presumption. You look at the cohorts over as many years or decades, hopefully years, using the more recent data. And you can usually, like an aging in place population, you just see that bubble move. And that's, like I had to do that for Burr Ridge recently. And, I mean, you could see that bubble just go. And because of the cost of price, the cost of living in Burr Ridge, you don't see a young population there really. Because it's hard to move in unless you know what I'm saying? And so people stay there. I think Villa Park could be the other where people stay because,
yep. So that's what we're initially seeing on this set of data right now, is that we do have an aging population, and the single-family detached housing stock has not increased in value, which means there's not a lot of sale that's going up because it is low cost to live here. That's what this data is telling me, that there has not been a significant number of turnover of houses with new families moving in yet. That's what I'm seeing.
Right.
That's my
With-
analytics right now on this, is what I'm
yeah, that's kind of what I would think too, because with the pretty stagnant housing price
and stagnant population growth.
and a stagnant, yeah. And so you have people probably staying longer than they might in another community, or selling their house to move into a condo in the same community, which is not an option here.
Right.
But is in a lot of the communities around us, not all of them, but more and more options, or for smaller attached dwellings, whether they're condos or townhomes or,
Lower maintenance. I
yeah.
guess. Yep. Yeah. But that's an interesting one, though, and how long you've lived here, so we'll talk to our consultants and see if that's a data point with the American Community Survey or not.
Almost long enough. I think a lot of it has to do with weather.
That's how I feel.
Hey, where's that bubble coming from? What's the same number? What's this doing? And by that, it says it should keep dipping. There should be a drop, so.
Yeah, I always like those age cohort charts where you've got all the age in the same chart, and you get the bubble, and then you can put each one next to them and actually see the population either age in place or replace itself, or, not saying that needs to be something in here, but that's always a useful type of chart. If you know what you're looking at.
I think talking to a lot of the younger people, it's getting easier for them to make the houses bigger. So more of them are going with that option.
Yeah.
Instead of moving out.
So anecdotal, right, is that we've had a lot of conversations at the over-the-counter right now regarding permitting about I went shopping in the open market to buy a house, and I also got a quote to just do a second-story addition. And here's my building permit for my second-story addition.
Yeah.
It is, it's, yeah. The
Becoming
rest of the
more
market out there, to
popular.
buy that bigger house, that 2,800 square foot with the basement, all that stuff, which doesn't really exist in our community right now, they're finding it's easier to actually just do a full year of construction. So, yeah, we're seeing that. Which is good, because then that home value will then slowly rise with the new construction.
Yeah.
Doesn't always require a sale. Right. Make improvements.
Yeah, and I would venture a guess, like, I mean, just, I'm using Elmhurst as the example, but sure, the median price of house in Elmhurst has increased, but
Yeah.
that's because there's a crap ton of new houses
It helps. Yep.
that are bigger and,
Yep.
and that's, I'm not saying that's the model
No,
for
that's-
Villa Park, because,
That's what happened there, though.
but yeah. That's probably true for significant portions of,
Yeah, they've also had a lot
DuPage.
of single-family attached developments
Yeah.
in Elmhurst over the last decade.
Yeah,
So that's been
definitely.
a significant boom to that.
yeah.
So that was that's almost 90% of them.
The new
Of the
builds?
boom,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yep.
Page 12 of the PDF, page 11 on the bottom right corner. Top right, key consideration. The first one is expand entertainment options. Could we get any kind of data as to the types of entertainment options that were discussed, as opposed to just the blanket statement of entertainment options?
Yeah, we can probably dive into that, maybe add a chart. Theater,
Yeah,
bowling alley.
I think that's an aspect that I'd appreciate more data on, to see where we stack up with, do we have enough, restaurants within a certain price range, per plate, or, per night out, versus, we know we don't have a movie theater.
Right.
Like, that's obvious.
Right. But do
What,
people want it?
right, so it's what do we have, what don't we have, and what is the request?
And to go on with that, is there any way that we can do it by age group?
Only if they answer those questions on it. So yes, because if we collected that data, then yes, but that was an optional question, people get a little weird sometimes. We'd rather collect the data and not know their age than, but yeah, it's all in the chart. I'll add that. Where'd it go? Lost my note.
So I know as far as if you go towards high school age groups, there's not really anything here for them to do.
Sure.
And both of my kids answered that one.
Yeah, excellent.
300, 200.
That's good to hear, though, that it's not just the adult population that has taken the survey. We spread this to the school districts as well, to try and get everyone that is a part of the community. So, yeah, I'm glad that's.
Was there anything on your end that you're reading that sort of jumped out that we hadn't, that was sort of unique?
I don't know if it's unique. We talked about it a little bit, but it's taking a few of the different data sets and then doing a real quick analytics of what I know, and it's the population decrease and then stagnant growth, a dip after the Great Recession in housing values, and we still haven't actually climbed out of it yet, where as you look around at all the other surrounding communities, they're well above. So like, what's going on in our particular demographics, what is happening? And it could just be the age cohort, that aging in place is a thing.
Right.
So
Right.
that you don't get the economic churn that comes along with that, right? As two empty nesters move out and 4 youths come in, that, right? And I don't know that I'm seeing that, so that's just,
Are you talking about housing value?
yeah.
So when they talk about housing value, are they basing values on sale prices only? Or, for example, would it be tax assessments and things like that? Tax assessments wouldn't necessarily be dependent on sales.
Correct. It's not just on sale. Not just on sale.
Okay.
Actual value.
So actual value, which is stagnant.
Is there any deeper dive into specifics, like, because we're a village of basically, tiny little, single-family detached ranch houses with 1 or 2 bedrooms versus we don't have the big houses that empty nesters can't maintain anymore.
Right.
We have the perfect village for empty nesters that want to stay
Right.
forever.
So- Not totally, except that the needing a diversified housing stock kept coming up in every one of the touch points, either the survey or through Map Social or the stakeholder interview, the workshops. So using that and then through the planning doc, it might be, the actual comp plan might be to make a recommendation on how do we increase appropriate housing diversity so that we can have our aging demographic move out of the existing home, but still age in the community, like that kind of stuff. But no, have I done that now? No. Yeah, but I mean, what I'm seeing is that something's got to give with our housing stock, right? That's off the
Yeah,
this
because like,
report.
we don't really have the housing stock where if you were 70, 75, and you wanted to stay in Villa Park, but you didn't want your bungalow anymore because you're tired of stairs. You don't want to mow the yard. You don't have the perfect little ranch house like Eric over there.
We do have a lot of little ranch houses, so.
We do, but we have a lot of bungalows and we have a lot of, like Cape Cods, and there's a lot of stairs. You're down to the basement to the laundry room, you're upstairs to the bedroom, you're up 4 stairs to your back door.
Yep, a couple of split levels where you're all over the place. Huh? Yeah.
That's
And
what mine is.
See? Yeah.
while people might be in those houses,
4 stairs
that
is
doesn't
another-
necessarily mean they want to be in that house.
7.
Some of them might. I mean, I was, and I shared it with Eric, but I was reading an article recently about it. Basically, baby boomers are selling their houses, moving out of their houses at a much lower rate than previous generations. They're staying in their houses longer. Some of that's they're living longer. So they're, in the housing market, you have fewer houses available to young people generally because the older generations are staying in the houses longer.
Which is not a Villa Park specific
I was gonna say,
thing.
that's not
It's not unique.
specifically a Villa
Well,
Park
that's just
thing, but,
happening.
but as far as like housing value and stuff, if you're 70, you're probably not adding that second floor. Right? You're not adding that, you're probably not, you're not doing the improvements that you might if you were 25, 35, even 45.
Right.
That would push up the house value above inflation.
We need housing for everything above 50.
And we need housing for why do we not have, what is it, the 20 to 34? Why do we not have the 20 to 34? Because most people now aren't married till they're 30, right? I mean, 25, 30 at the earliest for most people. And
Yeah.
if you're a couple that's not married, you don't want to, go in on a house together, or maybe you can't afford a house, or there's no houses on the market. You want to rent, where do you rent? In Villa Park. Ovaltine.
Right.
Where else do you rent?
Right. Which has a wait list.
Right. Where else do you rent? Where else do you rent in Villa Park? Other than the handful of small multifamily units up around the train station,
Right. 3-story.
which are aged and, you probably have a barely working window air conditioner in a lot of them, and, they're not up to the current expectations of a 25-year-old.
Right.
especially, a couple who, two income, who can afford a little bit, doesn't need a bottom dweller, so, a low price point, but they can't afford Elmhurst maybe, or,
There's a nice one going up on Westmore,
I saw that one.
across from 7-Eleven.
Yeah.
What is that building?
It's gonna be a.
Luxury apartments.
It's luxury apartments?
I wouldn't doubt it if you would see the rest of that street turn into that.
3-story luxury apartments. Driven by that lot a million times and never even thought of it as being vacant until they started cutting trees down on it. And I
That's
thought,
on the east side, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, I know what you're
just north of the Prairie
Yep,
Path.
yep. So to piggyback off of this, and given the note within the memo, which is better suited as a report, need for housing diversity, exactly what you mentioned earlier. Fair point. Again, it's fact, it's data-driven. My consideration is for the solution of this, or the consideration for the solution is where. So you're saying we lack options for seniors, young adults, or young families. That's fine, you can throw that blanket statement at us, but I'd like to know, like, what sections of our community are they looking for more senior housing, for younger families? Are there specific areas within our village that we can examine and take a and take a magnified lens to review what's going on in these areas that is not providing these housing options?
What's conducive to that?
Right, so
senior-
like for seniors, they want to be, if we're hypothetically, they need to be within a extremely close proximity to the X, Y, and Z services that they're looking for. Young families may not want X, Y, and Z, but they want a close vicinity, they want to be in a close vicinity to A, B, and C. So I want to know the where and the why, because I imagine it is somewhat is going to be location or proximity driven to certain services that they are looking for.
Yeah. Cool. Sounds good.
I'll just say this has been kind of a project of mine where I've asked people, I've talked about assisted living, I've dealt with it, I've specifically talked about different locations, I know what some of the requirements are. But I know a lot of the older people in town that I have talked to, the main thing, somewhere center of town. Not on one side or the other, right in the middle. The town's small enough, you can get to either side from the center easier than it being on one side or the other. And some of them don't want to deal with being on the north side of the train tracks, because then it's harder to get back.
So I'm glad that you mentioned train tracks and generally. Yeah, y'all know where I'm going with this one.
Sure.
It's a big wait time.
Yeah. Can a solution to decrease the traffic and the backlog that we get when a freighter comes through on either of the tracks. We need the solution that that we need some kind of over underpass for the south track, for the metro track on the Ardmore, or examine an option at Villa or Addison.
Yeah. We've already started, in advance of the compound, we've already actually started that process with ICC.
Yeah, because we already have the overpass on the north end of Ardmore.
Correct, yeah. Yes, so we have started that, and in order to get the most amount of potential grant funding, you better believe that goals and objectives to accomplish that task will be in the comp plan.
Yeah.
Did your community take into consideration this? Absolutely.
Also, from just like a public health and safety perspective, allowing a street to be unencumbered by train tracks for fire, police,
Absolutely.
EMTs.
Yep.
It's the big difference between the pedestrian and then the auto.
100%.
They're looking at pedestrian and auto, but I think everybody's shooting for the auto pedestrian for that reason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually like the way Lombard dealt with that. where they put a tunnel in for the pedestrians, and then they've got the underpass that are on Main
Oh,
Street.
right. Yeah, no, that is, but it is active right now behind the scenes.
Excellent.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I forget, was the next phase of that, funding was approved for that, correct?
We are working on establishing funding on how much percentage of the engineering we would have to pay for.
Gotcha.
That's meeting today.
A&E ain't cheap.
No.
I think that would, depending upon where the underpass, I would presume it'll be an underpass, where the underpass would be where you would see your most change in the village, as far as development.
Yeah. Be a very large impact for the plus. Good impact.
With regards to the two unincorporated portions on the northeast and then on the south, as we do examine the feasibility and the potential that those options present, I understand that, my understanding is that a vast majority of that land is privately owned, if not all of it is privately owned, but if there's any, as we examine that potential, I would encourage to also think progressively about the use of those areas and not just incorporating to incorporate, but plan progressively for what that use entails.
Yes.
Yeah, like the 2000, the previous comprehensive plan has pretty extensive planning. I mean, the area, the triangle up at Villa and North Avenue, that was one of the key study areas. Obviously, there's a lot of potential for all different types of development there, depending on how you view that area. I think the area between Roosevelt and Harrison is I mean, the vast majority of that is, if incorporated, it seems would be highly unlikely to be anything but what it is. So, I mean, I'm not saying there's not a benefit to annexing it, especially parts of it, but the northern donut hole is both more logical from a development standpoint and potentially an easier lift.
This is different. This is.
I'd love to see Woodman's.
I know. I know. This guy.
I have suggestions.
I know. Got market conditions at play.
Well, that's also a portion where there's no green space.
Yeah.
And as indicated by the taupe-colored area designation, that we are not within a 10-minute walking distance to a park. So that may be a solution to another problem. If we could utilize some of that for a more communal resource.
Anybody else have questions or comments or thoughts about any of it? I mean, for me, for the most part, this is just reinforcing what I think I already assumed. I mean, which is good.
Which is good, because it's no longer anecdotal, and it's no
Right.
longer just a fear. It's written down, and we've all discussed it, and how they become facts.
And not surprisingly, like when you read the staff's hopes and dreams and the hopes and dreams of people that came out to our meeting, there's a lot of overlap. I mean, obviously, staff has some concerns that maybe didn't occur to us and vice versa, but there's a lot of overlap in terms of long-term visioning and goal setting and things like that.
Well, and I think, I mean, me personally, I think some of it has to do with, we already know what, I think we have a good idea what the residents are concerned about. But we don't have a good idea of what the stakeholders are concerned about. And I guess that's more what I'm interested in hearing what they have to say, because
Yeah.
how do you get an idea of how do you put it all together?
Yeah, so more to come on that.
And what do you do when they're in conflict with each other, which is sometimes the case.
It's true.
Well, you find that.
You try to find compromise.
St. Charles Road's a big one.
No,
Right.
Jason, there was one more comment I had.
Go ahead.
The bus shelters, the buses are totally underutilized as they go through Villa Park. We see them going by, and usually they have 2 or 3 people on. I'm not sure how to encourage people to take it. My wife does love to take that. And you have easy access to the Green Line in Oak Park, and it's not that bad. It's about an hour and a half commute, which isn't that different than taking the Eisenhower.
Right.
But one of the things there that they've suggested are the bus shelters, and that is a good idea, although I wouldn't want a bus shelter on my parkway. So the design is, the design is going to be a challenge, so that it's provides comfort, and shelter, yet it, complements someone's
Yeah.
home.
So along bus lines in general, one of the things through the planning document may end up being having a more in-depth look on, are the bus routes the best location for our village currently? Or should we pursue an amendment to those routes through PACE? I could absolutely see that analysis being done.
Yes.
Completed.
Yeah, and that's, I think it was before either of you were here, but I know when,
Previous
we had to,
administration.
yeah, well, we did have to reroute the bus for a while because the St. Charles Bridge was
Oh, sure.
closed for
But
construction.
that temporary.
Temporary for like a year. But I did discuss, like would people, if you have a project like the Union, and you have a project like Ecoterra, why wouldn't you have a bus route, if you could, that goes to the train station? Right? Maybe, I mean, I'm not saying that's feasible, but and I know that the Bike and Transportation Subcommittee's probably talked about that a million times, so I'm not gonna, step over them, but there probably are ways to improve the routes. But you were talking about bus shelters.
Well,
I mean, a prime example of, like, we have a bus route on Roosevelt, right? And on both sides of the street on Roosevelt. And the other day I was driving to work because I didn't take the bus. We've at least got sidewalks on the north side of Roosevelt now. So if somebody's waiting for a bus, even though, I'll be fair, most of our sidewalks weren't clear, the property owners hadn't cleared them. But you sort of have a place to wait for a bus. On the south side, which is not Villa Park, but as an example, the south side, which is not Villa Park, there's no sidewalk. If you're waiting for a PACE bus, you're standing on the curb of Roosevelt Road, literally. And I watched a woman come out of the convenience store, with a bag of whatever, climb over a snow mound, cross the street where there was no crosswalk, because that's the way Roosevelt is designed, cross over another snow mound, and then stand in the snow waiting for a bus. I wouldn't take that bus.
No.
I'm just,
But you had to. Right.
I mean, she does, she might not have any other option,
Right,
but, but, so, there are ways to do, sometimes even just a bench. would be-
Right.
Actually, I know there was someone in our community who actually put out, in the parkway, put out a bench, and it disappeared. So she put out the bench again, and I believe she chained it to something. But for people who wait at her bus stop near her house. So
Which is why probably we don't have any bus shelters, because they would either be vandalized or,
yeah, but if we didn't do things because they might get vandalized, we would never do things. I mean, just gotta do your best to make sure that. Anybody else got anything, or? Anybody down on this end?
Excellent. This is very helpful. Thank you, guys.
Anything else you think you need from us, or?
No, we've got all the notes, the discussion. We're going to circle back with Halsey Levine, give them our notes. Obviously, we can always just rewatch tape as needed, and then they'll make some adjustments. And then ultimately, we'll have a second draft after the stakeholder, the business workshop, and the community visioning. We're not going to bring that one back again for a full conversation. It'll
Yeah.
just be finalized. And then as the planning documents come forward, we'll be bringing those to you guys as we continue through the comp plan creation process.
I do have one more that I
Yeah.
just, walkability. Have we done any kind of sidewalk study?
Yeah, the sidewalk gap analysis has been completed, yeah.
Okay, because I know, I walk every day, and, sometimes depending upon the area that you walk in, your neck hurts because you have to constantly look down as you walk.
Yeah, so it's actually no sidewalk, or the sidewalk is not in good condition. There's an appropriate term for it, but it's that. It's like-
Disrepair.
Yeah, tripping, hazard,
Have a lot of
disrepair,
that.
there's all those kind of things that fall into that middle group that's like green, orange, red, red being none, so.
Yeah.
That was it.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I just replaced 100-year-old sidewalks.
I think mine were laying on dirt,
Yeah. Yeah.
and, because I know when we redid our street, they're like, how much of your sidewalk do you want to replace? I said, all of it.
If you're gonna do it, let's do it.
All right, if there's nothing else, is there a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion.
Pause.
Oh, pause. Oh, wait, yeah, I gotta go through the rest of this real quick.
Yep, just to make sure.
Yeah,
we're
no,
on
you're
the up
right.
and up.
Any public comments on non-agenda items?
Thank you.
Seeing none,
All right.
is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Got a
Second.
motion, second, all in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned.